Today I will present this paper with Antonio Romero-Medina from Carlos III. And remember, Antonio will be keeping track of the chat and will try to answer the question that you may, of any details that you may answer on the chat of the. But whenever you have any question, please open your mic and go ahead. Okay, interrupt me anytime, because this is one of the first times that we are presenting this paper. Comments are more than welcome. Okay, we should start your recording. Okay, well, this is a paper about school choice with transferable students' characteristics. Okay, although it's another paper on school choice, we think that eventually we can find a nice application for this pandemic time that I think that is even more appropriate than the typical school choice application. Okay, so basically, just I will start with referencing the basic ideas of school choice, and just remember that in many developed societies, the education is provided by the government, or at least some degree of public education is provided, or at least financed by the government. And many times, parents have a voice in the schooling which the children will attend in the future. Okay, many cities, regions, you attend the school that is closer to your home, but in the recent years, there's a pressure for increasing the choice of the parents in these publicly financed schools. Many cities and school districts have allowed the parents to express the preferences about the schools, and depending on these preferences, okay, the schools are assigned to different schools. Okay, and the basic point in this problem, even though education, primary or intermediate education, is assigned in the market, there are private schools, and you pay the money you get at the school. The point is that money shouldn't be play a role in the way in which, in order to determine in which publicly funded school are you assigned. Okay, and for that reason, well, in Spain, in the US, and elsewhere, the governments, regional or local, use centralized mechanisms to allocate the resources, the available seats in the publicly financed schools to the students, and money doesn't play a role. Okay, or shouldn't play a role. Okay, basically, the idea of the assignment of different students to different positions, different seats at different school, is one of the most successful applications of matching theory that we have been seeing in the recent years. Okay, that apply the old theories by Gale and Shapley in the 1960s. Okay, they're finding the stable marriages, and has been applied to the allocation of public schools. Okay, starting with the papers of Michel Valinsky and Typhoon Sommet, and later on by Attila Abdikadroglu and Typhoon Sommet. Okay, there has been a huge literature trying to find the proper way of assigning kids at schools, and the idea is that the allocation of school choice is a problem, a two-sided problem, two-sided market matching problem, in which on one side we have schools, and on the other side we have students, and several students can be assigned to the same school, and the assignment of students to schools is based on students' preferences, the seats that are available at each school, and some kind of school priority rankings of students. Okay, the role that preferences of students' preferences on the side of the the schools is determined by some kind of ranking of students that schools have in order to assign seats when there are more students trying to get into a school than positions available, okay? And the point is that the crucial point in the school choice problem is that the only student preferences are relevant for welfare analysis. Only student preferences convey welfare information and are relevant in order to determine whether one assignment of student to school is more efficient or not than other. Whereas the priority rankings of a school determine whether introduce some kind of fairness or justice in the model, okay? The idea is that we can, if schools can rank students, the ranking is used to subsidize, no? When there are too many students that want to get into to school, well, this priority ranking determines who gets into the school, okay? And the point is that these priority rankings could be more or less reflect moral preferences of the authorities, merit, whatever, and the idea is that the assignment should respect this ranking, okay? It could then be the case that I get more points in order to get into a school and I'm not assigned to that school, and somebody else is getting in that school and gets with less points than me, okay? So think of the grades in order to get to a university degree, or in the MIR on the National Medical Residence Program, some rule that applies that determines when how to assign the over-demanded positions, okay? Okay. The point and what we're going to do in this paper is to analyze a little bit the structure and the role that priorities play in this allocation of students, okay? Because, well, priorities, as I have just said, reflect authorities' preferences, moral judgments, could take many forms, okay? We can use simply ordinary priorities as preferences of the students, or as we know in Spain, we could use very convoluted, intricate point system based on different categories, okay? But it could take any form, okay? For instance, in the most usual way of constructing priorities in the US, for instance, in Boston, is just attending whether you live in the neighborhood of the school and whether you have siblings attending the same school, okay? And basically, the basic priority that is taken into account in Boston and many US areas is that, well, you should be going to a school close to your place, and if you have a brother and sister in the same school, you should go with them, or with him, or with her, okay? So priorities in Boston are quite simple. First, you have the more points if you are living in the neighborhood and have some sibling in the school. Then I think that you can see the cursor. Then if you have a sibling there, then only the work zone, and then if you don't live in the neighborhood and you don't have any neighbor, okay? In other areas, for instance, in the elite high schools in New York and Chicago, it's merit. Basically, you have to take an exam, and the higher the grade that you get, the higher priority you have. Think of the MIR in Spain of university degrees in Spain. In Spain, we are we do things more sophisticated. We have a plethora of categories like income, number of siblings, whether you live in the neighborhood or not, whether you have siblings in the same school, some additional school idiosyncratic criteria that could be whatever, and even legacy points. If your parents, older brothers have gone to the same school, you get some points, at least in Madrid, okay? Okay? But basically you get points, and in different categories, the more points, the better, okay? But eventually, it's clear in Boston, it happens also in the application in Spain, is that we have many times scores in difference classes. We have a lot of indifference, and then eventually random type breaking has to be used, okay? Eventually there is a lottery. Even if you have many categories, even in Spain, there is at least in Madrid, there is a lottery draw in the Consejería de Educación that takes the best, the number that determines who is in case of a tie, who's get the higher priority, okay? And the point is that many times these tie breakers do not convey any authority preference, any moral judgment, okay? It's just a way of breaking ties, okay? But of course, different priorities would lead to different final allocations, okay? And on the other hand, we have from one side priorities, the preferences of the students, it could be whatever the families could want to have, and different algorithms, different methods to obtain a final allocation of students, okay? Well, the most famous algorithm that we don't employ here in Spain, but it has been widely used in the US or anywhere that there have been school reforms, has been the students' optimal stable matching based on the third accepted algorithm proposed by Gale and Shapley that basically takes into account preferences and priorities in this way. First, if a student applies to the best preferred school, and the schools temporarily accept the best student that have applied and rejects the remaining applications. And in the subsequent stages, rejects that the students apply for new schools. And each school at each step reviews the new application and the old application that have already accepted, and keeps the best of the old and new. So the acceptance at the first stage is only temporary, because in the subsequent stages you can lose your priority if somebody with higher priority applies, okay? And eventually this algorithm terminates at some point, provides basically the allocation, the assignment that is fair, that takes into account all the priorities of the schools, that cannot be improved by any other stable application. In Spain, we use another algorithm that basically in the first stage is the same, but the acceptance are final. So once you are rejected in the first stage and you apply for the second stage, you only apply for the empty seats that have been awarded before, okay? And of course, different algorithms generate different properties, okay? The first acceptance is an optimal, induces to revelation of preferences for the students, doesn't generate any justified envy, it's fair, respect of all the priorities, but it may select Pareto-dominated assignments. It could be possible to quickly improve all the students without harming anybody, okay? Whereas immediate acceptance is efficient, but doesn't respect priorities because you lose your priority if you are rejected in the first stage, and introduces a lot of strategic behavior for the families, okay? and that basically benefits sophisticated families. Okay, so we find that there is a clear trade-off between fairness and efficiency. Okay, I will come to this example later. And the point is that what we do in this paper, okay? Well, the point is that the introduction of priorities introduces a lot of restrictions in the problem that makes that, for instance, a good algorithm like the first acceptance doesn't select Pareto optimal allocations, okay? Because we have too many restrictions, the restrictions introduced by the priorities, okay? And the point that many times these priorities depend on many characteristics. And for instance, we think of the random tiebreaker. The random tiebreaking has it's just a way of solving times. There is no moral judgment, no preference behind the tiebreaker, okay? And maybe if we relax this tiebreaking, or if we think that some categories that we use for the definition of priorities could be relaxed and actually could be exchanged between among the students, we could have the possibility of having Pareto improvements for all the students without harming anybody, while retaining the spirit of the fairness, okay, of the priorities, because we are only exchanging a part of the priority that is not really relevant, okay? And we could have, for instance, some examples. The idea is that some years ago in Amsterdam, they started to apply the first acceptance with multiple tiebreakers with different schools. Actually, in Spain, we have different tiebreakers at different schools. And eventually, the families eventually demanded in courts to be allowed to swap the tiebreakers in order to get the more preferred allocation, okay? So they realized, some families in Amsterdam realized that changing the tiebreakers that they did obtain at different schools, they were better off, okay? Or think of the changes that we had here in Spain, in Madrid, that in 2013, the regional government basically practically eliminated the idea of work zone, the priorities for the points awarded to attending schools close to your place. Okay, what we saw there is that there's a recent paper by Cortázar, Montalbán, and Murcia, and a recent paper, bachelor thesis by Belén Ipola, that we can see that the elimination of that priority created was completely non-neutral. Okay, it benefited some kind of families, the families that had a much adoption for going to a private school were benefited with this elimination of that work zone. Okay. The point is that, well, if we could make any possible reform of the system to be Pareto improving, we would like to have, we could maintain somehow the priority with the work zone, but allow changes between different families, okay? So what we try to do in this paper is try to analyze the structure of the priorities that determine schools' priorities, and realize that there are some characteristics that are exchangeable or not, transferable or not, and try to find a systematic way to exhaust fair improvements with priority swaps, okay? Maybe we could see this with that idea, okay? This is a simple example. We have 3 students and 3 schools with only 1 seat, okay? In which the basically the priorities in this school are determined because there is a component like a tiebreaker of the work zone that can be exchanged. But it turns out that the student optimal allocation is, well, is this one, but a swap between 1 and 2 could be mutually profitable without harming the student free. The point is that with the initial priorities, this swap cannot be, it's not fair, okay? Because 3 has more priority than 1 at school 2, okay? But if the students 1 or 2 swap this, the priority, the characteristic that allowed us to have higher priority at each school, we have that we would have a new priorities in which the Pareto improvement that we saw before would be fair according to the new set of priorities, okay? So what we try to do in this paper is to analyze, to provide a way in which we can be sure that we can find these Pareto improvements that do not cause envy, that are fair once we allow for exchanges of this transferable part of the priorities, okay? Okay. Basically, what we eventually find is to find find an algorithms that allow us to find all the possible Pareto improvements, okay? So I don't know whether, before going to the model, I don't know whether you have any question. Yes, no? Okay. So I will skip much of the literature. There is a vast literature on the application of new algorithms, the implications of these new algorithms. And there is a bunch of recent papers that precisely analyze how we can relax the priority or the fairness constraints to attain efficiency, okay? Starting, well, we had the papers by Kesten, that was very well published, the paper by Pepe Alcalde and Antonio, or Lars Sellers and Tyler Moyer on that check for credible fairness complaints, okay? But the most closely related papers are paper by Erdin and Ergin in American, and a recent paper by Umudu, Gitmet, and Ongut Girmad, Theoretical Economy, that basically follow the same idea, that basically extend these papers, okay? Whereas Erdin and Ergin focus on the problem when we have cost priorities and we introduce arbitrary tie breakings, and they show the possibility of finding Pareto improvements. Dur, Gitmet and Gilmad, while they focus in that, they introduce the possibility of having arbitrary violation of priorities, okay, and provide an algorithm that allows to find Pareto improvement with arbitrary evaluation of priority. What we do is that we justify the existence of this violation of priorities, and we are able to apply the algorithm to a wider set of problems, okay? So basically, what we find is a rational an extension of the Dur arguments to a more realistic setting, okay? A more tractable setting by introducing more structure in the priority structure, okay? So I think that's time for getting to do a little bit into the model. I won't go, the remaining of the talk is I will introduce some notation, and then I will work with an example, little bit more convoluted example than the one that I have just presented, that allow us to present the main algorithm that we use and the intricacies that we will find, okay? And then, we find, I will present a bold application of the algorithm to, I think, that a more realistic setting, more appropriate setting than for school choice, okay? So if it's okay for you, I will get into the model, okay? So basically, the ingredients of the model are quite basic. We have a set of students, a set of schools. Each student has a preferences for schools, or the empty set that means having an outside option that be homeschooling, going to a private school, or whatever. And then schools have a priority ranking, okay? And what we would like to have a solution for the problem is to find an assignment of the students to schools or staying home, okay? In such a way that for each student, we assign it to a school. For each school, we assign at most as many students as the initial quota, okay? We could have two matchings, and the matching dominates other matching if all the students weakly prefer the matching mu prime to the matching mu. At least some student strictly prefers the mu prime, okay? So the idea is that school priorities has no welfare meaning, okay? So in order to check for efficiency, we only care about students' preferences, okay? And now, what we introduce in this paper, okay? What I have just presented is the basic model. What we introduce in this paper is to consider that we introduce more structure in how the priorities are defined, okay? And basically what we say is that for each school, the students have some characteristics that can be transferred among students for that school, okay? So each student I has a set of characteristics for each school, and this characteristic for each school can be exchanged among students, okay? And we focus, given the initial characteristics that you have at different schools, we consider reshuffles of the reallocation of those characteristics among the students in such a way that you can only trade one school for another school, okay? Eventually, you start with some characteristics for many schools, but you can trade with other students or with several students, but you can end up giving up some characteristics for one school, receiving characteristics for others, for just one additional school, okay? So you cannot give up all your endowment in all your schools in order to receive points in just one school. This is one-to-one, okay? And then extended matching is just an allocation of students to schools and reallocation of the characteristics of the students, okay? And once you have the private characteristics are exchanged or possibly exchanged with the limits that we have here, that we only exchange characteristics one by one between students, we can define schools have priorities that are based on the identity of the students and the characteristics that students has for that school, okay? So basically what schools compare are the students with the characteristics that he or she may initially have, or that initially that she has exchanged with other students. Okay. Basically, the idea is that you can change the tie breaking with other for the school with other student. The priorities are not based on identity, but in identity and that transferable characteristics. What we will assume is that these priorities that are based in students and characteristics are monotonous. Okay, so if a characteristic is good as lambda is at school S is better for I that characteristic lambda bar, then lambda is better than lambda bar also for J. Okay, so if a characteristic is good for one student, it's good for other student too. Okay, so there are, in such a way, we can order the characteristics that the students have, and we can clearly say that that particular characteristic is better than that. Okay, having 3 siblings is better than having 2 siblings in that school. Okay, having a good random tie-breaking draw is better than having a bad tie-breaking draw. Okay, so basically, all the priorities that we can think of are monotonous. Okay. And then we have the object of interest are extended matchings. We know how schools compare extended matchings, pairs of students and characteristics. And then the definition of stability is the usual, okay? But based on the preference of the priorities that are constructed with over pairs of students and characteristics for that school. Okay, so basically, standard matching is stable, expose after the transfer. If it's fair, that is, if I prefer the school that J is going to be a 10, it has to be the case that J has more points, has a higher priority at that school than I. Okay, and then it has to be individual. So that's what it says, that if fair is that there's no justified envy. No, if I am not if I cannot get into medicine school and I would like to go there, is because the people that the students that get there have higher obtained a higher grade in the high school. Okay.
Camilo, quick question.
Yeah.
So just so I understand, so a student, so this priority structure in these schools, a student who have multiple characteristics. Mm-hmm. So first of all, can a student have multiple characteristics in the same school?
No. I think that you have devoted to have each student has a characteristic for each school, and you can exchange the characteristic with the location that you have your school with my allocation, but I cannot accumulate points in some way.
So you cannot have the way that you're modeling priority, you cannot have students for example, having priority for students with siblings and priority for students with walking distance. So you have to have either one or the other.
No, you could have it. You can. If you would like to transfer walk song and siblings, you have to transfer the whole bunch. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So just to finish, so a student shows up only once in the priority ordering of the schools. Each student shows up only once. Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Ignacio. Okay. So basically, what we allow bijections of the characteristics at each school. Okay. And finally, in the typical definition of stability, We have individual rationality. You shouldn't be assigned to a place that you don't want to go. You prefer to go to a private school or to stay at home. No wastefulness. I think that if a school eventually has empty seats, it's because nobody wants to go there. Nobody else wants to go there. Okay. Okay. The point is that we have seen, and we will see, that the student optimal, with the example we have seen before, the student optimal with initial allocation of characteristics is exposed stable, but is in many cases is not efficient. It could be Pareto dominated by another exposed stable allocation. Okay, so what we will be interested in to finding exposed stable extended matching that are not Pareto dominated by another stable extended matching. Okay, so what we would like to find, if we want to maintain some kind of fairness, we would like to see how far we can go for efficiency. Okay, we can go when we allow this initially after the transfer of characteristics, we could allow for new fairness, new fairness suffers that could improve all, could imply a Pareto improvement for the students. Okay, so the point is that, I just say, the student optimal matching is stable, but maybe dominated by any other stable matching. And we will try to find is a systematic way to find exposed stable matchings, standard matching that are not dominated by another exposed stable matching. Okay. The way that we will do is, I think that the rest of the talk I will work with an example. Okay, with only for students and free schools, and one of the schools have 2 sheets. School has 2 seats. Okay, and there is some kind of conflict of interest because there are 2 students who would like to go to school 1, but there's only 1 position available. Okay. 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 So what we do? Okay, we have these priorities, and initially students 1 and 2 have points for or extra characteristic for school 1. Only student 4 have extra points for school 2. Okay. We have that if 3 receive these extra points for school 1, he could defeat student 2. And if 1 receives points for school 2, he could defeat individual 2. Okay. So the student optimal without any transfer of characteristics would be like that. 1 would go to 1, 3 and 4 to school 2, and 3 to school, and 2 to school 3. Okay. And what we will define is a graph in this in this problem, in which basically we start. We will ask the students point the positions that they would like to, that they would prefer to occupy. Okay, so in this, with these preferences and with this matching, the point is that student 1 would prefer to attend school 2, so he would like to we have an arrow pointing 3 position and 4 position. 2 is in his less preferred school. He would like to occupy any other position. So we have these arrows here and there, okay? 4 is at his best preferred school. He wouldn't care changing with 3. And 3 would like to change with 1, okay? So basically, these arrows imply that I decides the position of student J, okay? And we have many arrows there, okay? The point that we can see here that we could find that 1 and 3 would like to exchange their positions, okay? And they would improve without harming 2. But they cannot do that, okay? Why? Because, wait, let me go there. Because 3 has no extra point for characteristic for school 2. So there's no exchange that 1 and 3 can do, okay? 1 could give 3 the points at 1, but 3 has no point to give to 1, okay? And actually, okay, we can define, and this is a more interesting graph. Here, the arrows imply that I would like to occupy J's position, 2 would like to occupy 3 and 4 position, 3 would like to occupy 1 position, 1 would like to occupy 4 position, and with exchanging characteristics, you could have the right to occupy that position, okay? So 1 would like to occupy 3's position, but there's no way that he could occupy that because that would be a violate 2's rights to that position, okay? Remember that 3 has nothing to offer to individual 1, okay? So here we don't have any cycle, okay? But we could see that, but should we stop here? No, because actually 3 has no characteristic to offer to 1, but 4 has, okay? And the point is that if 3 occupies 4 occupies 3 position and 1 picks the characteristic of 4 in school 2 and 3 picks the characteristic of 1 in school 2, okay? Then we would have a cycle, okay? And we could reallocate the characteristics in such a way that 1 goes to school 2, 3 goes to school 1, and basically 4 stays in the same position, okay? Basically, and with this new extended matching, 1 and 2 still improve, 4 and 2 are the same than before, in the same position. With the change of characteristics, there's no violation of fairness, okay? What in the next step, what if we continue the same logic? The point is that 3 is at his best position, 1 and 4 are at the best school. 2 would like to go to attend other schools, but nobody wants to exchange anything with him, okay? So the point is that the final allocation lambda prime, okay, that we have just so far, is ex post stable, and we cannot find any additional profitable Pareto improvement of the students, okay? So basically, that's the, we would end up with a ex post stable and constraint efficient extended matching, okay? I will skip this presentation. And basically what we do, okay, and basically this is basically the extension, of, just allow me to write down, of Dur, Guimet, and Jitmat's paper that we introduce, for any extended matching, we can create a graph in which the directed edges is that a student points to any other student if a student has the right for this position, the right and the desire, okay? Okay, so that if one student points to other, the point is that I could occupy that seat without any violation of priorities. Okay, and the point, if any cycle in this graph would generate an improvement that doesn't violate justified MB. Okay, and the trick is changing the schools, the sign of the schools, and exchanging the priorities, the exchangeable characteristics. Okay. Okay, so in our previous example, what we have is that cycle, and we can run this, in this graph, we can run this cycle and end up with a improvement. Okay, in subsequent stages, for the resulting extended matching that we obtain, we could apply the same logic. And that's generate what we call a student exchange transferable characteristic algorithms. That is the students exchange algorithm presented by Dur, Gilmet, and Gilmatz, but with differences in which we have to exchange the characteristics, and we have to get involved individuals that do not strictly improve in the exchange. Okay, and the point is that starting at a spot stable extended matching, we could find improvements that respect fairness, and we, by carefully exchanging the transferable characteristics. Okay, basically at each stage, we pick parity improvements that respect fairness. Okay. What's very important is that there is no top cycle argument, okay? The point is that we could have the exchanges in which the parity improvement may imply that the students exchange characteristics that are not the most preferred, okay? And of course, there could be several cycles that could render different final outcomes, okay? But in any case, and this is the main theorem, the main characterization is that for each problem, the repeated application of this is a mouthful, the student exchange with transferable characteristics algorithm result in a constraint efficient post stable matching, and moreover, all the possible constraint efficient matchings can be obtained with the algorithm. Okay, that is basically not only find this algorithm, or this algorithm does allow for finding parity improvements, but they allow for finding all the possible parity improvements that respect fairness. Okay, for doing that, we need to get involved students that do not strictly improve in the parity improvement. Okay, so this is basically this algorithm, what we allow us to obtain all constraint efficient allocation after all possible exchanges. Okay. Just to conclude, before going to the most interesting application that implies that we will have to lot of work, just some implications. Remember, I haven't talked at all about incentives in this presentation, okay? Why? Because basically we know that any rule that implies a Pareto improvement over student optimal matching is going to be manipulated, okay? But the point is that we focus on the tension in the trade-off between fairness and efficiency that is determined by the priority structure, okay? We know that. But basically, we cannot go, this is something that we know that we cannot solve, okay? Maybe we are pretty sure that since these results are quite similar to the applications of early learning, we could find some games that are under some Bayesian equilibrium with the appropriate beliefs. We are pretty sure that we could implement any constraint efficient allocation, but it's not the point, okay? Something that's important is that under the final allocation of characteristics, since we have a constraint efficient outcome, we would know that the final outcome is the student optimal result of the student optimal, the first acceptance algorithm with the final priorities, okay? So basically, under the correct priorities, we would have the student optimal allocation, okay? So the point is that anyway, what we cannot do is to work with feasible, trying to generate an ex-ante trait of characteristics. Well, it's going to be a big mess, and it couldn't lead to Pareto improvements. Okay, that's something that we know. These are the limits of the work. Okay, and now finally, I would like to talk a little bit about a fancy the bold application of our paper, okay, of our result, of our technique, okay? And that I think is quite appropriate for environments in which strategy or revelation of preferences is not an issue, okay? So basically, we will follow the bandwagon of Parag-Pathak, Typhoon, Woodcomber, and Moon-Midgen methods that have been recently applied the logic behind the first acceptance to the assignment of scarce resources, okay, basically of triage strategies in pandemic rationing, okay? And basically, the idea that they have been presenting recently is that the problem that the hospital have in order to allocate scarce resources like respirators, drug treatments, or like remdesivir is like a problem of like a school choice with a limited seats when we have some patient that deserve some treatment. Okay, basically they think that the main example that they use is that nurses and doctors who have priority in order to receive a respirator once they get the COVID-19, okay? Because they are necessary for the system to keep working, okay? And the point is that they define reserve quotas for different groups of patients, and they generate different waiting lists, priorities for each reserves, and then priorities are assigned to each individual in the waiting list. They get applying the logic with in the student optimal difference algorithm. They find a fair allocation of resources, in which, well, the preferences are clear. because all patients want to receive the treatment, the respirator, okay? But what if there are different treatments that maybe have different, that may be more adequate for different students than for different patients than other, okay? What if you could be in different queues, okay? Oops. Okay, but the idea is that if different people may yield different outcomes, we know that the deferred acceptance is not going to be efficient, but our algorithm would help us to find Pareto improvements. Why? Maybe by exchanging tiebreakers, okay, in each queue, while maintaining, respecting the ethical values, okay? And in this environment, we don't have the problem of incentive of truthful revelation of preferences, because basically the medical criteria determine patient preferences. So there's no incentive issue, okay? And I'm basically thinking, for instance, and different protocol for kidney transplant. We have scarce resources, not the organs. Okay, I think that we have evidence in Spain that the problem is that we have enough kidneys for transplantation in Spain, but maybe we don't have enough operation rooms. Maybe we don't have enough medical teams. Okay, and this is one of the reasons, because we are abandoned in Spain. Basically, we are not doing living donor kidney exchange. Okay, but there are different treatments. We have standard transplant, living donor, standard transplant with immunosuppression, okay? We could assign different patients for different queues, but eventually we could have that the patient would prefer to go from this, to get into the immunosuppression queue, okay, rather than waiting for 1.5 years for the standard transplantation, okay? So basically, the point is that our algorithm provides a way to finding part improvements in this environment, okay? So I think that after, and of course, if in next year we have different vaccines that are appropriate for the COVID, we have different treatments that are more appropriate for different patients, we could have the same problem, okay? And we could have find a way in which we could move the Pareto frontier while respecting all the ethical values behind the queues, okay? So I think that is true, okay? So basically, what we have done in this paper is to provide a rationality of fairness conditions, okay? And we find, we explore the structure of school priorities, provide an extension of the result by GitMed and GMAT to provide algorithms that result in justifiable, stable Pareto improvements. And we have a lot of homework to be done about exploring further applications, fancier and broader application of these results, okay? That I think that go well beyond the typical school choice, a problem that initially motivated our research, okay? So I think that we have plenty of time for some questions. So thank you very much for your patience, okay, and your attendance. And should you have any question, please don't open your mics, open your camera, and don't be shy. And Antonio will be happy to answer all your questions. Okay. Okay.
So, quick question.
Sure. Thanks.
Just to see if I understand. So, let's say that everybody have the same characteristic in your model.
Yeah. You have
then your mechanism is going to give essentially the same result as the efficiency adjusted. Yay, would that be a fair statement?
That's it's not completely clear. I think that if the preferences are fully transferable, okay, if you basically you can transfer all that determines your position is your transferable part. Well, we can find an algorithm in our class of algorithms that selects like the deferred acceptance plus TTC.
TTC. Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a better.
Yeah. I think that going to the efficient adjusted deferred algorithm, I think that we have to check a little bit with the tiebreakers and the idea. But basically, that's the point. Okay, with the choice of the cycles and the possible tiebreakers rule in order to select which is the cycle that I will solve, I think that we could end up in the Kesten's result. Okay.
And just another question, because can you go back to that example? The last example, the one that you go through most of the time. Yes. And then you say that student 3 can, you said that, so student 3
is initially
1S1. You say that
one, but has nothing to offer.
That's the thing I don't fully understand.
Positions, but
so because you say that, so there you say and student I3 with characteristic 1 at school 1, right? So student 3 with characteristic 1, the line that is right below.
Yeah.
Right? So you put there student 3 with characteristic 1 in school S1. So I'm just trying to understand how exactly this example.
Initially, students 1 and 2 have these characteristics in school 1. Okay? But if 1 exchanges his characteristics with 3,
yes,
3 goes before than 2.
But then 1.
And on the other hand, if 1 receives the extra characteristic at school 2, he is better at the school. Check here. Initially, 2 is better. He has higher priority at the school 2 than 1. But if 1 receives this extra characteristic that only 4 has, he could beat 2.
So just so each school has only one characteristic that can be priority. No.
That's just for the example.
So then for me. So I don't fully understand this example, because student 1 has characteristic 1 at school 1.
Yeah.
Right. And then in this exchange, he would just get characteristic 1 at school 2, even though student 3 doesn't have that characteristic at school 2. How
we need to get involved the student 4. That he doesn't improve. That helps create a cycle.
So there's a cycle of transfer of characteristics. That's what's going on there. Okay. I think I understand that better. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot for the question. Okay. That's the point. That's the difference with Dur's paper. We have to keep track of the transfer of characteristics in order to get everybody involved. Okay?
Okay. I think I understand that.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Ignacio. Thanks a lot.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So I think that, well, if Should you have any question? Okay, so Mateo is over there. So I think that is, should you have any question, please send us for email, and we will be happy to be working, to keep working in these difficult times in improving this paper. And okay, thank you for your patience a lot. Well, oh my God. And thanks a lot for coming. Okay.
Thank you all for coming.
Okay.
Thank you.
Normally, I'm the moderator, I'm the gatekeeper, I'm the one who says, everybody, please open your mix and let's thank the.
Yeah. Okay, let's have that more for
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you for coming.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye, thanks.
Bye-bye, Jose. Bye.
Bye.